At Whispering Pines Wildlife Sanctuary, miracles aren't just stumbled upon, they're forged. When two fragile lion cubs were abandoned by their injured mother and left teetering on the edge of death, their survival seemed impossible. That is, until an unexpected savior emerged. Gerda, a grieving bobcat who had recently lost her own litter. Against all odds, a bond was born, crossing species, defying instinct, and challenging everything the sanctuary thought they knew about what makes a family. But 2 years later, as the cubs grew into powerful young lions, a question loomed. Could a bond built on love endure the untamed call of the wild? This is a story of resilience, unlikely connection, and a reunion so breathtaking, it has to be seen to be believed. Before we begin, tap that like button and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. The first light of dawn spilled over the dry plains of Whispering Pines in northern Arizona. Dew clung to scrubby vegetation across the wide sanctuary, where the soft growls and cries of rescued animals greeted the rising sun. For Dr. Eleanor Reynolds, the sanctuary's founder and lead vet, mornings like this usually brought peace, a brief calm before the storm. But this March morning felt different. Eleanor's weathered hands clutched her coffee mug as she stared through the observation window at Kira, a 6-year-old African lioness rescued 18 months prior from poachers near the Arizona-Mexico border. Just 3 days earlier, Kira had given birth to 2 cubs, a miracle considering the extensive wounds she'd suffered in a poacher's snare before being found by border agents. "Any change?" asked Tom Whitehorse, the sanctuary's senior keeper. His long black hair streaked with silver, tied back neatly, his face etched with years of wildlife care. Eleanor shook her head, worry creasing her brow. Her 63-year-old frame seemed to sag slightly under the weight of concern. Nothing. She's still ignoring them. Inside the enclosure, Kira lay in the corner, golden eyes half-lidded, seemingly indifferent to the 2 tiny forms nestled in the straw Eleanor's team had laid out. The cubs, 1 male, 1 female, were frighteningly still. Their weak mewling had dwindled to faint whimpers. "It's been 3 days, Tom," Eleanor murmured, brushing her silver-streaked auburn hair from her face. "I've seen reluctant mothers before, but this—" She trailed off, watching Kira stretch with detached disinterest. Tom nodded, his native heritage giving him a quiet reverence for maternal bonds, even in animals. What she went through, it may have hurt more than just her body. "I wanted to give her time," Eleanor said softly. "But we can't wait anymore. They won't survive another day." Tom placed a firm, reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You gave her every chance. Now we give them theirs." Within the hour, the rescue team carefully retrieved the fading cubs. Kira didn't resist. She didn't react at all. The apathy was worse than aggression, and it broke Eleanor's heart. The sanctuary's medical unit erupted into motion as Eleanor and her team raced to stabilize the cubs. Dr. Sarah Chun, the sanctuary's newest vet at 32, inserted IV lines with practiced precision while Eleanor mixed a specialized formula. "Their temps are dangerously low," Sarah reported, checking vitals. "The little male's worse off." Eleanor nodded, the weight of 40 years in wildlife medicine pressing down on her shoulders. "Let's get them warm." Heat pads at 101. As the day wore on, the team worked in shifts to bottle feed every 2 hours. By nightfall, both cubs showed slight signs of improvement. Still, Eleanor knew the battle wasn't over. "What should we call them?" asked Mia. Johnson, a bright-eyed 28-year-old intern, her optimism undimmed by the grim situation. Eleanor hadn't thought of names. After so many losses, she'd learned not to name too soon. "Let's keep them alive first," she replied gently. "They need more than warmth and milk," Tom said, stepping in for the night shift. "Cubs need grooming, social contact." "I know," Eleanor sighed. "Bottle raising is our last resort." Everyone in the room understood the unspoken truth. Hand-raised big cats often struggle in the wild, and even sanctuary life could be a challenge. "What about a surrogate?" Sarah suggested, gently adjusting the female cub to help her digest. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. We don't have any lactating lions. Doesn't have to be a lion, Sarah replied, a spark in her eyes. I read about cases in Johannesburg. Cross-species, fostering. Sometimes maternal instinct goes beyond biology. Tom leaned in, intrigued. Tom's interest piqued. We have Gerda. A long silence followed as Eleanor considered the suggestion. Gerda, an 8-year-old bobcat, had only been at the sanctuary for 2 months. She'd arrived after being struck by a car on Highway 89. Her physical wounds had healed well, but emotionally, she was still subdued, unusually docile for a bobcat. More telling, her initial examination had revealed signs of a recent pregnancy, though no kits had been found near the accident site. A bobcat raising lion cubs? Eleanor echoed, the skepticism clear in her voice. The size difference, alone. Indigenous stories tell of wolves raising children, bears adopting deer, Tom said, his voice taking on the steady rhythm it often did when sharing Navajo teachings. Nature finds a way, when compassion opens the door. Eleanor glanced down at the fragile cubs, their patchy golden coats and closed eyes painting a picture of helplessness. They were clinging to life. What choice do we have? She murmured. It's worth a try. But we proceed with extreme caution. The next morning, preparations began in earnest. Gerda's spacious recovery enclosure was modified to accommodate the potential fostering. The team built a small den designed with narrow access, just wide enough for Gerda to enter, but secure enough to protect the cubs should rejection turn. To aggression, we'll need constant monitoring, Eleanor instructed, checking the cubs' vitals. Their condition had stabilized overnight, but they remained in critical condition. The second it turns unsafe, we pull them. Tom nodded, setting up motion-sensitive cameras linked to monitors in the observation room. Any interaction would be watched without human interference, minimizing stress. Meanwhile, Sarah prepared a light sedative for Gerda, just enough to keep her calm without dulling her instincts. Do you really think this could work? She asked, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. I've been in this field 40 years, Eleanor said, drawing the syringe, and nature still finds ways to surprise me. With Gerda gently sedated, Eleanor and Tom carefully placed the lion cubs inside the den. The tiny siblings curled against each other, dwarfed by the enclosure's walls. Now we wait, Eleanor said, retreating to the observation room. For over 3 hours, Gerda remained curled in her usual spot, occasionally glancing toward the new structure but making no move to investigate. The cubs, still weak, released soft, broken cries that crackled through the speakers. Maybe we should try a different approach, Sarah suggested, glancing at the growing shadows of late afternoon. Give her time, Tom replied gently. The sedative's wearing off. She has to choose this on her own. As if in response, Gerda finally stood. She stretched, then began a slow, cautious walk toward the den. The team held their breath. She paused at the entrance, nose twitching at the unfamiliar scent. A low growl rumbled from her throat, making Eleanor's hand hover near the emergency response switch. Wait, Tom whispered. Gerda lowered her head and peered inside. The female cub let out a faint cry, thin and pleading. Something shifted. Gerda's posture softened, her ears perked forward rather than flattening. Then, with tentative grace, she stepped into the den. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, eyes wide, watching the live feed. Inside, Gerda circled the cubs once, twice, then lowered herself beside them. For a long moment she simply lay there, her dappled coat stark against the tawny fur of the lion cubs. Then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, she leaned down and began grooming the male cub with delicate licks. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. In 4 decades of wildlife rescue, she'd seen miracles, but this was something else entirely. Tom, she whispered, you were right. The big man simply nodded, blinking away his own tears. In the days that followed, Gerda's maternal instincts blossomed. She groomed the cubs with devoted attention, stimulating their circulation and keeping them clean. At night, Gerda curled protectively around the cubs, her compact body providing the critical warmth their fragile forms needed. What shocked the staff most wasn't just her patience, it was that she began to nurse them. While Eleanor continued to supplement their feedings to make up for differences in milk content and volume, the act itself was astounding. "We should name them now," Mia suggested one afternoon, a week later, as the cubs, noticeably stronger, tumbled over Gerda's relaxed form. Eleanor, who hadn't left the sanctuary in nearly 10 days, found herself smiling. "You're right, they've earned it." After some lively debate, the team agreed. The male would be called Leo, a nod to his species, and the female Nala, a name Mia insisted was perfect, borrowed from her favorite lion-themed movie, and "They've earned a place in the record books, too," Sarah added, glancing up from her phone. "I've been reaching out to colleagues across the country. No one's ever documented a bobcat fostering lion cubs. Not like this." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Eleanor cautioned gently. "They're still vulnerable. The journey isn't over yet." But as weeks stretched into months, Leo and Nala didn't just survive, they flourished. Under Gerda's care, they grew strong, their legs sturdy, their eyes bright. The bobcat, astonishingly adaptable, modified her parenting for her unusual brood. When they grew too large for her to groom entirely, she focused on their faces and ears. When they became too heavy to carry, she guided them gently with her paws. By the 4th month, the cubs had already outgrown their foster mother in size, but not in affection. Their bond remained unshakable. In the expanded enclosure built to accommodate their growth, Gerda taught them to stalk and pounce. Her methods were bobcat. Their execution was clumsy and lion-like, but the effort was genuine. Word of the unusual family began to spread, first among local visitors, then across Arizona after a Phoenix news segment. Eventually, the story caught national attention when a major wildlife documentary crew arrived to film the trio. "Doesn't all this attention make you nervous?" asked Dr. Marcus Reed, a respected big cat expert from the University of Texas. He had traveled to observe the extraordinary family firsthand. Standing beside Eleanor near the training area, they watched as Gerda demonstrated a slow, low pounce, which Leo promptly bungled with a playful roar. "Of course it does," Eleanor admitted. "But the publicity brings funding and their story is valuable. People learn from it." Marcus nodded. "The real question is what comes next. Physically they're doing well, but behaviorally," he had a point. While the cubs were learning basic hunting skills, they weren't learning to be lions. "Lions are social creatures," Eleanor said, echoing her own sleepless thoughts. "They live in complex prides. Bobcats are solitary. We don't know how this will affect them long term." "We're trying to fill in the gaps," she added. "We show them footage of wild lions, we mimic pride calls during feeding, and we plan to introduce them, carefully, to the other lions in the sanctuary when they're ready." "It's remarkable work," Marcus said. "But it's going to be a challenge. They can't be released." "No," Eleanor agreed, her voice tinged with quiet sorrow. "But they'll always have a home here." As Leo and Nala neared their first birthday, it became clear that the time had come for a difficult transition. Gerda had been a devoted mother, but her charges were no longer cubs. They were young lions, and they needed room to grow into themselves. The separation was handled gradually. First, Leo and Nala were moved to an adjacent enclosure, allowing visual and scent contact through a reinforced mesh. They spent increasing amounts of time apart, with daily supervised reunions to ease the emotional shift. "She seems to get it," Tom observed one evening, watching Gerda calmly groom herself after another play session with her now massive foster children. "She knows they're growing up," Eleanor said, her heart heavy. "Mothers always do, still doesn't make it easier." By the time the cubs reached 18 months, they had fully transitioned to the sanctuary's main lion habitat, a sprawling 5-acre terrain designed to mirror their native savanna. It featured elevated platforms, shady trees, watering holes, and enrichment zones to encourage natural behaviors. From the elevated platforms along the fencing, Leo and Nala could observe the sanctuary's other lions, an aging male named Samson, and two middle-aged lionesses, Zora and Luna. "Look at that," Sarah said one afternoon during their routine observation session, pointing toward the habitat. "They're copying Samson's roaring patterns." Sure enough, the young lions had begun to vocalize more like their species, mimicking Samson's deep, rhythmic bellows. Still, their unique upbringing had left its mark. Leo retained his peculiar, bobcat-like habit of climbing trees with shocking ease, while Nala preferred to stalk prey through dense brush, instead of taking the open, sweeping paths more typical of lions. "They're building their own culture," Eleanor mused aloud. Part lion, part bobcat, entirely themselves. As their second birthday neared, Eleanor and her team began preparing for something extraordinary, a reunion between Leo, Nala, and the bobcat who had raised them. After months of consulting with animal behaviorists and carefully assessing every risk, they had agreed to attempt a supervised interaction. The sanctuary had received a generous donation to construct a specialized interaction enclosure, neutral ground for all involved. Outfitted with multiple escape routes, visual barriers, and elevated platforms, the space was designed to maximize safety and minimize stress. The return of the documentary crew added pressure, their cameras poised to capture a moment no one could predict. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked quietly the morning of the planned reunion. "We don't know how they'll react. It's been so long." Eleanor stood watching as Leo paced in the holding area, his powerful body radiating restless energy. His mane had begun to fill in, framing his head with a rugged elegance that made it impossible to forget how much larger he'd grown than the bobcat who had once carried him in her mouth. Nala was calmer, her gaze sharp and focused as she watched the sanctuary staff's movements. "They've had visual contact all along," Eleanor reminded her. "And don't forget, when Gerda escaped during the storm, she didn't run. She went straight to their habitat." It was true. During a fierce summer thunderstorm, a latch on Gerda's enclosure had failed. She could have slipped into the surrounding wilderness, never to return. But instead, sanctuary cameras had captured her trotting purposefully through the rain, straight to the lion habitat. She had waited there, soaked and silent, until morning. "Let's do this," Eleanor said at last. The reunion unfolded in slow, deliberate steps. Gerda was released into the interaction space first, giving her time to explore and scent mark the enclosure. Then, one by one, Leo and Nala would be introduced through a separate gate. Eleanor, Tom, Sarah, and two additional handlers took up positions around the perimeter, each equipped with a tranquilizer gun, precautionary, but ready. The film crew operated from elevated blinds, silent and still. Leo was the first to enter. He moved with the quiet confidence of a young predator, pausing just inside the gate to sniff the air. He caught her scent instantly. Gerda, nestled among. The rocks at the center of the enclosure remained motionless. For a moment, the air tensed. Leo lowered his head, an ambiguous gesture, open to both affection and aggression. Eleanor's hand hovered near her tranquilizer trigger. Then Leo let out a deep, rumbling sound that fell somewhere between a growl and a purr, and approached. Gerda emerged from her rocky shelter. The sight of her tiny frame beside his hulking mass was surreal, yet she showed no fear. She stood still as he lowered his great head toward her. What happened next made every watcher's breath catch. With almost delicate grace, Leo leaned in and rubbed his mane against her cheek, a universal feline greeting of trust and recognition. Gerda responded by licking his muzzle once, a mother's kiss. Even now. "My God," Tom whispered, eyes glistening. Nala joined moments later, and the reunion blossomed into something even more profound. The young lioness approached slowly, then dropped to the ground and rolled onto her back, belly exposed, a submissive, trusting posture typically reserved for bonded pride mates. Gerda moved between her two foster children, sniffing them both, her body weaving between theirs with ease. The scent exchange reestablished something ancient, something instinctual. For nearly an hour, the trio remained together. They groomed each other, rested shoulder to shoulder, and even played, clumsily, but gently. Leo and Nala, despite their size, held back their strength instinctively. Gerda, in turn, seemed to remember the games they had loved as cubs. "I never would have believed it," Dr. Marcus Reed said quietly, standing beside Eleanor at the main observation point. He had returned just for this moment. Their bond transcends everything: species, time, logic. Eleanor nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the family below. "Family finds a way," she said. "It always does." After the successful reunion, the sanctuary incorporated regular family visits into its animal management plan. Every few weeks, Gerda would spend supervised time with Leo and Nala in the interaction enclosure. These sessions became a favorite among sanctuary visitors, though Eleanor insisted on limiting audience sizes to protect the animals from overstimulation. As autumn bathed the Arizona landscape in golden light, Eleanor found herself reflecting on the journey of the past 2 years. She sat on the observation deck, coffee in hand, watching Leo and Nala lounge in the late afternoon sun on their favorite platform. "Penny for your thoughts," Tom said, joining her with a second steaming mug. "Just thinking about miracles," she replied, accepting the cup with a smile. 2 years ago, those cubs were dying, Tom said. "Now look at them." "Thanks to Gerda," Eleanor corrected gently. "She was the real hero." "Speaking of our hero," Tom said, his eyes crinkling with a grin, "the board reviewed your proposal this morning." Eleanor straightened. "And?" "Approved unanimously. Construction on the retirement habitat starts next month." A weight lifted from Eleanor's shoulders. The new enclosure would allow Gerda to live out her remaining years in comfort, while maintaining regular contact with the lions she had raised. Now nearly 10, senior for a bobcat, especially one with her history, Gerda deserved every comfort. "That's the best news," Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. "She's earned it." "The documentary premieres next week," Tom reminded her. "Early reviews are calling it a game changer for conservation education." Unlikely. Family. The bobcat who mothered lions had grown beyond a simple nature. Documentary. It had become a meditation on adaptation, compassion, and the many shapes family can take. Advanced screenings had already sparked a wave of donations and increased awareness about wildlife trafficking and sanctuary work. "I hope it helps people understand," Eleanor said, watching Leo playfully bat an enrichment toy across the habitat. "Animals aren't so different from us. They love, they adapt, they form bonds that defy explanation." Tom followed her gaze. Leo and Nala now lay side by side, their breathing synchronized, their sibling bond undeniable. The public loves a happy ending. "Is it an ending, though?" Eleanor asked softly. "Or just the beginning of a new chapter?" As winter approached and cooler winds swept across the Arizona highlands, new possibilities began to emerge. Leo showed a growing interest in Luna, one of the sanctuary's adult lionesses. Nala had formed a surprising friendship with Samson, the elderly male, often bringing him pieces of her enrichment treats, gestures of quiet camaraderie. Gerda, too, had found a new focus, a recently rescued bobcat kitten orphaned by a wildfire. Though direct fostering wasn't possible due to health protocols, the staff placed their enclosures side by side during the kitten's quarantine period. Gerda spent hours watching the young one, ears flicking at its every squeak and stumble. "Life finds a way to continue," Eleanor said during one of her weekly educational talks. A group of senior visitors from a nearby retirement community listened, rapt, as Leo roared, a fully matured, thunderous sound that rolled across the sanctuary, like a storm cloud. "Even in our golden years," she continued with a wry smile, "we can forge new connections. Find new purpose. Gerda taught us that. Age and difference don't have to be barriers to forming family." Martha Williams, an 82-year-old regular, nodded approvingly. "Just like my granddaughter and her adopted kids. Different as can be, but family all the same." "Exactly," Eleanor agreed. Sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we choose. That evening, as the sanctuary quieted and stars emerged in the clear desert sky, Eleanor made her final rounds. She checked on the Bobcat kitten, then stopped by Gerda's temporary habitat. "You changed everything, you know," she told the Bobcat, who blinked slowly from a cozy perch. "Not just for those cubs, for all of us." Her final stop was the lion enclosure. Leo and Nayla, no longer cubs but not yet fully grown, rested together on their elevated platform. Different in so many ways, yet united by a bond that no textbook could have predicted. They glanced toward her as she approached, ears twitching, but remained at ease, calm, secure, home. As Eleanor turned to go, Leo's low purr followed her through the cooling air. It was a sound no human could replicate, but its meaning was unmistakable. Contentment, belonging, peace. "Good night, family," she whispered, and made her way back toward the sanctuary's glowing center. Behind her, under the vast Arizona sky, the lions settled closer together, their shared history etched into every movement, their future as remarkable and resilient as the place they now called home.